No one has to remind me of the importance of Christmas.
Poor leadership.
Big mistake.
Some of my Republican colleagues have the nerve to whine.
It's a terrible way to run a government.
I don't need to hear the sanctimonious lectures.
That is amateurish at best.
Colossal waste of time.
Reckless, quite inappropriate.
Looks incompetent.
Isn't that wonderful?
Last-minute Christmas time stunt.
They decide to work with us. We can all have a happy holiday.
No Scrooges here. Christmas is approaching, but a lot of bags left to unpack if you're Congress.
And it's always a Merry Christmas around here. Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Carl.
Every day, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics, everything you need to know. Twitter.com/Rick Klein, Twitter.com/John Carl, and those baskets of goodies getting handed out all around Capitol Hill.
We love it. We love it. But I'm going to start somewhere else. First Top Line, stay the course. The president and his national security team have done an exhaustive, extensive review of the strategy in Afghanistan. And Rick, the conclusion? They think they're doing just about the right thing.
Yeah, it's remarkable. You see, no one thinks that we've got the strategy exactly figured out, but at least in the public perceptions and the way that they're putting forward this strategic review, they're saying, look, it's working. We're moving toward this.
We're seeing some progress.
Some progress, and this 2014 deadline is one we're hearing about. Incredible when you think about President Obama's evolution on this as a candidate and even as president, as he got in there and saw what was going on. This is his strategy now. Yeah. There's no question about that.
Keep in mind, it's the end of 2014.
The end of 2014, exactly. The next midterms we'll be looking forward to. Next up today, bah humbug. As we mentioned, a lot of talk about this war over Christmas, as in when the Christmas holiday will actually be in Congress. A full plate still in front of members of Congress, including, but not limited to, funding the government, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, banning gays and lesbians from serving openly in the military, the START Treaty, the DREAM Act on immigration, and I'm sure there's some other things that are thrown in there as well.
No, but they got time, Rick.
Oh, sure.
What are you complaining about?
You're right. They've got Christmas is still 9 days away. Yeah. I'm sure that it's all possible that they make this happen. But look, this is what you get when you try to avoid some political votes before the election, and they kick so many things into this limited space of time, and this lame duck session just continues to turn on.
I mean, if you seriously look at Harry Reid's to-do list right now, what he has left, it is more than he accomplished in the 6 months prior. I mean, it is just incredible. But hey, like you said, we can do that in 6 days. We couldn't do it in 6 months.
Why not?
Next up, et tu, Mr. President? There's been a lot of hand-wringing over earmarks in this omnibus appropriations bill, including some stuck in by those Republicans that now say they hate earmarks. But my question is right to the President of the United States, who has been strongly critical of earmarks in the past and even suggested after the election that what he should have done was veto that last omnibus appropriations bill last year. A lot of familiar things here. Those weren't his earmarks. These are not his earmarks. So why doesn't he say, hey, you send me an appropriations bill with earmarks, and I'm going to veto it?
He's not saying that, and in fact, the White House isn't
decidedly not
is staying out of this directly. Instead, they've got a statement out there from the Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, saying that this omnibus is far preferable to any kind of interim steps funding the government. And the White House is saying, look, the Defense Secretary says it. That's where we stand right now. So it's really hiding behind the banner of national security on this political statement. A lot of Republicans are saying, issue that veto threat. That is not going to happen. He is going to allow one last set of Christmas tree ornaments to be done under his signature in all likelihood. And finally today, Palin goes lamestream. Sarah Palin, of course, hates the lamestream mainstream media, but she's doing a whole lot of interviews with them lately. Time Magazine, the New York Times, among them. And the latest is our own colleague at ABC News, Sarah Palin, later today sitting down with Robin Roberts for an interview you'll see on Good Morning America tomorrow. So Sarah Palin, clearly there are times that she can work with folks. Yes?
Did you just call Good Morning America lamestream?
Never. I would never even suggest that. I would never suggest.
What was your top line?
I don't know what you're talking about. This is all about Sarah Palin right now, and I'm back on our top line number 4. And what do you make of this? She's out there. She's talking.
Well, seriously, I don't know how you could say that she's really out there in a major way when she has not yet appeared on top line.
That's right. The invitation
is
still out there.
So let's reissue that invitation to former Alaska governor, former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin. We would love to have you here on top.
We'd even take the show on the road to do it.
We'll go to Wasilla.
There you go.
Wherever we have to go, we'll go.
In the meantime, John and I a few minutes ago had a chance to chat with Congresswoman Shelley Berkley, a Democrat of Nevada, as this big day on Capitol Hill unfurls. Here's a little bit of our chat. Thanks. Congresswoman Shelley Berkley, thank you for joining us on Top Line. I want to start with the big news today on the tax deal headed to a vote in the House this afternoon. Now, you're a big proponent of the estate tax as it's currently written. What is wrong with the argument that a lot of your colleagues are making that this is too generous a giveaway? Why do we need to see such high exemptions in the estate tax?
Look, I wasn't at the White House when the compromise was struck, but I do know this. Any attempt to change the tax compromise that was arrived at the White House between the President and members of the Senate and the House will fall apart or implode or explode or whatever you want to say, and we're not going to end this year with any tax cuts for middle-income families. So it's a pill to swallow, but I don't think it's a bad pill. I think this is a good piece of legislation that's certainly going to help the people that I represent.
But Congresswoman, on the question of the estate tax, which upsets so many of your Democratic colleagues, do you believe that it is where it should be? Do you believe that estates under $5 million should be exempt, that the rate should be down at 35%?
You know, I think it's instead of, wringing our hands and gashing our teeth, the reality is this. This is what we have. It's not going to change or the whole thing's going to explode. So I can parse it, I could argue it, I could say what's good about it, what's bad about it. I'm voting for the package.
And are you confident that there will not be a successful attempt to change this? As you know, there's been a lot of Democratic angst over this, and there'll be an attempt this afternoon to try to change the estate tax provision in particular.
Well, I think I felt a little more comfortable about it until we went into the whip meeting a few minutes ago, and there's, I think, there's a lot of dismay and anger in the caucus regarding the structuring of the rule, and so I wouldn't guarantee 100% now. I would have earlier this morning, but I think there are a large percentage of the people in the Democratic caucus that are very unhappy. They remain unhappy, and they still feel that the process wasn't fair and they didn't get an opportunity, or they're not getting an opportunity to vote their conscience.
So, Congressman, you know that Democratic caucus in the House as well as anybody. When you look at the contrast between the way this deal has been greeted there, whether the meeting you just described today or the one that we had last week where they voted not to bring it up, contrast that with what's happened over in the Senate, where this thing passed overwhelmingly. I mean, the vast majority of Democrats. Why? I mean, we're all Democrats up there. I mean, why such a difference?
Well, I think it's safe to say that the House took great exception to the way this was structured, and I think this is also residual election as well. People are not happy on my side of the aisle, and this is a way of expressing it. And I'm not suggesting that it's only that they're only expressing their anger by being opposed to this bill. There is genuine unhappiness with the way it was structured and the way it is. For my money, I think it's a good piece of legislation for the people that I represent. And the people of Nevada, we've got, as you know, I've got the highest unemployment rate in the country. 1 out of 5 people I represent are unemployed. They've got no work. If I don't vote to extend these unemployment benefits, I'm going to have, the people I represent are going to be in a world of hurt. This is very important. Middle income tax cuts, and I've said this before on the floor. The reality is, even though Vegas is the greatest city on earth, and you can really get a good deal now if you went to Vegas, I get a walking chamber of commerce here, but the reality is it's a working class town. I've got cocktail waitresses and keno runners and waiters and you name it, I've got it. They're well under the $250,000 threshold, and the reality is if we don't pass this thing, their tax cuts end in another couple of weeks. I'm not about to go home and put my people in such financial danger.
Congresswoman, another big story in Washington today. The president is unveiling his review of the Afghanistan policy. Essentially, they're coming back and saying that the current policy is working from the perspective of the White House. Are you comfortable with that? Is the Democratic caucus comfortable with the course that the Obama White House has set?
Well, knowing my caucus as well as I do, there's going to be a lot of questions and requests to know how they are measuring our success. I think after 9 years in Afghanistan, not only the country but members of Congress are becoming very wary of not only being in Afghanistan, but what we're supposed to accomplish and how we're supposed to accomplish it. Not only the cost to the taxpayer, but the cost in lives and losing some of our best and brightest in this war, I think is very serious consideration. I'd like to know how the administration is measuring this, and as you probably know, I've been a big supporter of our operations in Iraq, operations in Afghanistan. I support the troops, support the soldiers, support the veterans, but somewhere and soon we're going to have to figure out where we're going, what is victory, and how we're going to get there, and how are we measuring it. And until I see what the president has seen and presented, it's very difficult for me to form my own judgment.
And in fact, we've really seen public opinion move against the war. I mean, it's by some measures as unpopular as the war in Iraq.
I would say that that's an accurate assessment, at least judging from my mail and the conversations I have when I go home with my constituents. It's more of a question of why are we there? How long are we going to be there? How many more lives are we going to lose? And what are we going to accomplish? And we can segue over to Pakistan. And until they get control of the terrorist strongholds and are willing to step up quite dramatically more than they are, I think people are going to continue to become more and more disenchanted with this war.
Congresswoman, I want to ask you one thing. You mentioned the lingering effects of the election. You were quoted after the election as saying if you were Speaker Pelosi, you wouldn't run again to become minority leader, though of course you supported her. What do you make of her leadership moving forward? Anything changed in your mind? Do you think she's the right face for the party now moving into the new Congress?
You know, that's no longer a relevant issue for me. The reality is she is our leader, and I think we need to rally around her and support her because we're going to have a really tough couple of years. And if we start undermining her now that she is has been elected leader by the entire caucus, then I think all of us are going to be in a world of hurt.
Congresswoman, I was out there in Las Vegas with you on election night. You won. You won a big victory on a night that was bad for Democrats almost everywhere else. Will you come back on Top Line and announce your candidacy for Senate? Because we'd like to hear from that.
I will indeed if I decide to do that. There's a lot to weigh and measure, and I think I'd be disingenuous if I said that I wasn't looking into it and going to make a decision pretty soon.
All right, we appreciate the forthrightness, and we'll have you back on soon. Congresswoman Shelley Berkley, Democrat of Nevada, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Have a happy holiday. Thanks.
That does it for this edition of Top Line.
This is the place to declare your candidacy.
This is the place to declare the candidacy. Of course, John went to Nevada way too many times during the election cycle. We're still counting it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.